20 top Titanic facts. Discover the fate of the infamous ship. The Titanic, the iconic vessel that came to a very tragic end. But how much do you know about the world-famous ship? It's time to find out in our 20 top Titanic facts. Titanic facts. Number 1. Titanic was built by a company called White Star Line. She was completed and ready for the ocean on 31st March 1912. After 3 years in construction in Belfast, Northern Ireland. 2. She was no ordinary ship. Titanic was the most impressive and luxurious ship of her time. She was the biggest, too, measuring 28 meters wide, 53 meters tall, and 269 meters long. That's about the length of 3 football fields. Number 3. On 10th April 1912, the Titanic set out on her maiden voyage, first big journey, taking people from Southampton, England to New York, USA. En route, she called the Cherbourg in France and Queenstown in Ireland to pick up more passengers. Did you know boats are traditionally referred to as she? Historians think this may be the result of links in our language to ancient English, or perhaps it dates back to the idea of goddesses protecting ships on dangerous journeys. Number 4. Titanic's full title was RMS Titanic. Any ideas what RMS means? It stands for Royal Mail Steamer. As well as passengers, the ship carried nearly 3,500 stacks of letters, packages, and documents. Number 5. There were over 2,200 people on board the Titanic, 900 of which were crew members. The passengers included holiday makers, businessmen, and people hoping to start a new life in America. Number 6. Life on a boat on board Titanic depended on who you were and how much money you had. First class. The wealthiest people traveled in first class, located at the top of the ship. And boy, did they travel in style. They slept in private, spacious suites and enjoyed delicious food in the elaborate dining rooms. They had access to lots of facilities like cafes, a swimming pool, squash court, barbershop, and a reading and writing room. Second class, not too shabby either. Second class accommodations consisted of cabins with 2 or 4 beds and a sofa, storage facilities, a sink, and a mirror. Second class passengers could also enjoy an outdoor promenade, shopping center, relaxation rooms, library, and dining room. Third class. Third class facilities were much more basic, but they were still far better than those on other boats at that time. Located at the bottom of the ship, cabins slept up to 10 people and each had a sink and mirror. There was also a dining room where food was served 3 times a day. But the big downside, all 700 third-class passengers had to share 2 bathtubs. Number 7. For 4 days, Titanic made good progress across the Atlantic, powered by 3 coal-burning engines. But it was no easy job to keep her moving. Each day, the ship's 175 firemen shoveled 600 tons of coal into the furnaces, the weight of 100 elephants. Number 8. Titanic was also known as the ships of dreams. And White Star Line claimed she was the safest ship of all time. To make sure she wouldn't sink, her hull was made up of 16 separate sections. If 2 or even 3 sections were damaged and water got in, the ship would still have time to sail to safety. So all good, right? Wrong. Number 9. Just before midnight on day 5, in the freezing cold North Atlantic Ocean, an iceberg loomed out of the darkness, too big to quickly change directions. Titanic scraped along the side of the ice, tearing holes in at least 4 sections of the hull. Oh no. Oh. Number 10. The captain of Titanic, Edward John Smith, and his crew knew that the collision meant disaster. Titanic would sink in just a few hours. Distress signals were sent out to nearby ships, and passengers were ordered to get on lifeboats fast. Number 11. But there was one big problem. Titanic only carried 20 lifeboats, only enough to hold around half of the people on board. What's worse, the first lifeboats were launched half empty, wasting precious space. In panic, many people jumped into the ocean to escape the sinking ship. Number 12. As the Titanic sank, the bow, the front, went down first, causing the stern, the back, to rise out of the water and into the air. At around 2 a.m., this tilt caused the ship to break in two, sending all those still on board into the freezing cold ocean. Number 13. In the negative 2 degrees Celsius water, most passengers who went into the sea would have died from the cold within 15 minutes. Some managed to survive a little longer by treading water or clinging onto bits of floating wreckage. Number 14. The first ship to respond to the Titanic distress signal was called the RMS Capritha. But despite setting out immediately and traveling at top speed, she didn't arrive until around 3:30 a.m., over an hour after the Titanic had sunk. Number 15. On arrival at the disaster, the RMS Capria rescued those who had made it into the lifeboats. There were around 705 survivors in total, and all were transported safely to New York, U.S. But tragically, more than 1,500 people lost their lives on the Titanic, most never to be seen again. In the days following, the wrecked ship headed out to the disaster areas and recovered 300 bodies from the water. They were either buried at sea or taken to Halifax in Canada, the nearest major port to be identified. Number 17. Despite many attempts to find the wreck, Titanic remained hidden from the world for around 70 years. It wasn't until 1985 that she was seen again. An oceanographer, a sea scientist, Dr. Robert Ballard, set out on a deep-sea mission in the Argo, a robot submarine. The team discovered the Titanic on the seabed, nearly 600 kilometers off the coast of Canada. Number 18. Since then, there have been many expeditions to Titanic, and over 6,000 interesting items have been salvaged from the wreckage. These can be seen today in museums around the world and including jewelry, perfumes, plates, clothes, furniture, and even lunch menus. Number 19. The longest living survivor from Titanic was Milvina Dean, who lived to be 97 years old. She was just a baby when she, her mother, and brother made it into one of the lifeboats. Milvina lived to tell the tragic tale until 2009 when she passed away. Number 20. There have been lots of documentaries and movies made about Titanic. The first was a silent movie called Saved from the Titanic, made just 1 month after the disaster. The most popular today is the 1997 Hollywood blockbuster Titanic, which became one of the highest earning movies of all time. Would you have survived the Titanic? So, now you know all about the incredible ship and the tragic tale. But here's the big question. If you had been on board, would you have survived? It all depends on who you were. You were a woman or child. Women and children were allowed on the boat to board the lifeboats first. However, some men did get a place when the first few lifeboats didn't fill. You were rich. First-class passengers were lucky. They had cabins on the upper decks closest to the lifeboats. Many poorer passengers in this steerage class on the lower decks didn't reach the lifeboat deck in time. You obeyed orders. If you got into the lifeboats as soon as the crew told you, you would probably have survived. Remember that next time you're on a ship. You were brave. Many people were too scared to leave the big ship for the tiny lifeboats. Others stayed on board because they didn't want to lose sight of their friends or family. To survive, you needed the courage to go for it. You were willing to push. In the final struggle for lifeboat places, those who pushed won. You had stamina. Some survivors were plucked from the ice water after hanging onto bits of floating wreckage for more than half an hour. They had clung on to life. Okay, so that's the end of our reading for the 20 top Titanic facts. So now on the next sections, you're going to work through the different activities and you're going to take a poll if you think you would have survived the Titanic. All right, third graders, great job today.